Hello, my name is Vandeputte. I'm a time-lapse photographer in London. Time-lapse tutorials. I get asked every couple of days or weeks on Instagram or any other social media platform, should you worry about your shutter count on your camera when you're shooting time-lapses? As with any question, if I get asked it a couple times, I'll make a video about it. So, today's video is about should you worry about your shutter count? Let's find out. Now, I want to clarify, this is based on anecdotal evidence. It's based on the handful of cameras that I have had throughout my 7-8 year or so time-lapse career, but I do think I have a theory about why you shouldn't worry about it. So, hear me out. Firstly, bit of context. I've had many cameras over the years, but I have sitting on a shelf in Sydney a Canon 5D Mark III with over 600,000 clicks, so mechanical actuations that you just saw me do a bunch of times. And this camera is only rated for 150,000 clicks according to Canon. Now, it still works flawlessly. It pretty much functions as new. There's just a bit of gunk in the buttons and stuff because, you know, I've had it for a while. I have a 600D as well, which is very much an entry-level camera, crop sensor, quite cheap, very approachable, very accessible for a lot of people. It was a lot of people's first camera. It was called a 600D in Europe and other countries, and I think it was the T5i or the Rebel T5 or XTI, whatever, one of those weird names in America and overseas. And that camera has, if I'm not mistaken, 400 or 500 or maybe even 600,000 photos as well. I know 5D3s and 5D2s that have over 1 million clicks and they all still work, yet they're only rated for 150,000 photos. This camera currently has, probably after that intro, 170,000 clicks, which you can check in the menu, and it still works fine. So what's the deal? How come these cameras still function properly despite being, you know, 3, 4, 5 times over the estimated shutter count? Here's my theory. And once again, this isn't based on anything. This is based on my brain thinkings, thoughts. Cameras are rated for X amount of clicks based on the fact that you are walking around and shooting stuff with your camera and you're traveling a bit and you shoot a couple of photos there and you shoot a couple of photos there. Time-lapse photography, typically, is you put your camera on a tripod and you let it click away in a nice, chilled, controlled environment without running and gunning and banging it around. To me, that is a less pressure, less stress on the shutter mechanism, which consists of 2 elements, by the way. A couple of notes that I wanted to share. A mirrorless camera isn't exempt from mechanical failure in the end. A mirrorless camera still has a shutter curtain that moves in front of the sensor. Even if you think it's not there, it is there, trust me. Whereas this DSLR has a mirror that flips up and down as well. I'll show you some footage on screen of that happening in real time as well as in slow motion, which is pretty damn cool. So yes, a mirrorless doesn't have the mirror, but it still has that shutter curtain, so it is still impacted by mechanical failure eventually down the line. Now, it is down the line way further than when you would use a camera normally. That makes sense, right? Now, here's another thought for you. Should you worry about your shutter count when shooting time-lapses? I think if you're worried about that, time-lapse isn't the right niche of photography for you. You should find something else. Because the only way to get this really cool, awesome footage is to shoot a lot of photos. That's just the way it is. A good friend of mine once said, or used to say, if you are not willing to lose your camera, then you're not worthy of the shot. So, you know, put it out on the line. Obviously, that's a pretty privileged thing to say if you can afford multiple cameras and you can risk a camera for a shot. But that's the thing. Like, it's the only way to shoot these time lapses is to commit to a high shutter count. Then keep in mind that the high shutter count is not as bad because the camera's just sitting there on a tripod clicking away and you're not banging it into things and getting in and out of, you know, bags and airplanes and cars and stuff in dusty deserts. You just, yeah, it's a different kind of shutter count than a normal photographer, is my theory. By the way, then there's also cameras that have a completely electronic shutter where there's no mirror that moves and there's no shutter curtain. It is purely electronic where it just reads out briefly the data that the sensor is capturing without any mechanical movement whatsoever besides maybe yourself clicking the shutter button once to start the time-lapse and then it just runs by itself. So there's zero wear and tear there. Maybe, now that I'm thinking of it, there's a little bit of wear and tear on your storage card because, you know, any kind of storage eventually wears out. I'm on a bit of a ramble here, but if you have your data on one hard drive, consider your data lost because every mechanical thing in the world, including hard drives, eventually will fail. eventually. Could be now, could be tomorrow, could be in 10 years, whatever. If your data is on one hard drive, consider it lost. So please be smart about backing up your data. And that's about it, really. So, conclusion, should you worry about your shutter count when shooting time lapses? I don't think so. And even if you are worried about it, it's the only way to get great looking time-lapse footage. So, that's it. What are your thoughts? What do you think about my theory of time-lapse clicks being different clicks than normal photography clicks? Have you ever had a camera break on you? Have you had any cool stories with mirrors or shutter curtains blocking or exploding? Or I've seen some brand cameras that I'm sure you can figure out which one, where there were a lot of issues with that shutter curtain in front of the sensor. Some friends of mine have lost a lot of bodies, but then they were shooting in extreme conditions, so not, a cozy time-lapse session there. Also, before I forget, actually two things. Firstly, I've discounted all of my ebooks for now, so make sure you don't miss out because they will be going back to full price soon. If you want to make money from your hobby, Passive Income for Creatives, my latest ebook teaches you all about passive income for creatives. Any hobby you have, it all applies to that. And if you want to learn how to time-lapse like a pro, check out my 2 time-lapse ebooks. They're now bundled, quite cheap. Check it out. Secondly, YouTube memberships is launching soon, so keep an eye out for that, where you will get access to exclusive content. All right, and that's it. I'm becoming now a gross sweaty monster, so this is the end. Goodbye. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Cheers.